Hello, people. I am Jyotsna, and you are listening to my podcast, Just Being Jyotsna. So, I know it's been long. It's been a long gap since I posted the second episode, but here I am with the third episode of Just Being Jyotsna, and I hope you're all doing well. And man, we've reached the end of January 2021, and I think it went pretty fast. So, before I start with it, let me give this disclaimer. I am going to be using the F word here and there within this episode. So, yeah, because this episode is somewhat related to feminism, and I know that's a pretty cliched joke, but I wanted to say it anyhow, and I did. So, moving on. Why this topic for today's episode? A, because it's really important to me, and B, because I was looking at some old photographs and I found this picture that reminded me of a certain debate I attended as, I guess, a 12 or 13-year-old. And I think the debate was about gender equality. I remember it pretty distinctly because there was this boy my age, I didn't know him from another school, I guess, who had a stance which was in opposition to what stance I was speaking for. And he asked a question that was, how do you expect to achieve equality by giving women, which is one part of the people, extra rights, like emphasis on the word extra rights and privileges? How do you expect to achieve equality through inequality? And it seemed like a pretty basic question to him, and I gave a pretty basic answer. And I distinctly remember my answer as well. I said that when you have two glasses and you aim to fill them both in whole within the same time, and one of these glasses is 3/4 full, and one of these glasses is not even half full, barely half full, wouldn't you have to increase the rate of flow into one of these glasses? Wouldn't you have to give one of the entities a growth rate higher than the other? Wouldn't you have to do that to achieve equality? And I know this is an oversimplified version of a very complex response to what we now know as mansplaining, because that's what I think that had me thinking that it was a very childlike version of what mansplaining is, right? So I know it's an oversimplified answer, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And this brings me to another thing, which was that I was thinking about how we all feel the extreme pressure to give out an opinion on anything and everything. And I think it's general, it's healthy, it's good to have an opinion on things. But what seems unhealthy is that we aim to give out that opinion there and then, and we fear accepting that we do not have knowledge about something, or that we need time to think about it, because we think it's a matter of pride. And I guess it's just the last couple of years that I gained the confidence to say that I am not sure about what to say, I am not sure what my stance is, but I'll get back to you after I read about it or I understand it better. Because it takes courage, when the person you're talking to has extensive knowledge on whatever you're talking about and you do not have that. It takes courage to accept that. And I think I'm developing it, and I think I'm happy about it, because it's better to take your time and form an opinion rather than forcing an opinion on yourself that is not even yours, right? And accepting that we do not know something and then getting to know it I think that's how we evolve. Yeah. And speaking of evolution, I'll now come to the part of this episode that I'm really excited about, which I'm really excited to talk about, which is the portrayal of women in fiction. And by fiction, I will mostly be speaking about Bollywood movies and some other Indian movies because that's what really made me think about this. So, yes, I think that in earlier cinema or in earlier fiction, there was a concept of a steadfast black and white, a steadfast right and wrong. And the audience was spoon fed the opinion that they must have upon the characters, or they were spoon fed with what to think about the characters. And yes, so it was all pretty black and white. And I think over the time that has evolved. That has evolved. And there have been characters that have not been labeled, that have been portrayed in a gray area, and where opinions have not been spoon fed to the audience. But I think this transformation came much faster for male characters than it came for female characters. Even in current cinema, there are a lot of movies that portray women in black and white. I mean, let's just leave alone the movies that use female characters as not as characters but as plot devices and extremely objectify them. Let's just leave that aside. I'm speaking about the movies which are a bit more intellectual, which claim to be having a strong woman in it, or a prominent female lead, or a prominent female character. I'm speaking of those movies which are intellectual but not equally so for its male and female characters, because a lot of movies have taken up the courage, as I said, to portray male characters in a grey area and not to spoon feed our own opinions to ourselves. But the women have still been portrayed in black and white. They are either portrayed as bad women, they're either evil, they're people who want to destroy everything and everyone around them. They have the word bad in bold letters almost stuck to their foreheads. Or on the other hand, they are all sacrificial saints who have sacrificed everything, given up everything, forgive everyone, and know nothing bad. And while I'm speaking of this, how can I miss out on daily soaps? I'll not generalize it because I don't think I could ever watch all the daily soaps that exist. But I've happened to watch portions of them while I'm skimming through channels, or I've happened to watch them while someone else is watching it, or deliberately watched them to entertain myself sometimes because trust me, they give me the same feeling as I got while I was watching Takeshi's Castle. And it gives me the same feeling as when I watch someone falling into the deep waters or banging their heads on doors. You'll understand what I'm saying if you watch Takeshi's Castle. So yes, the point I'm trying to make is that these serials, these daily soaps are great examples of what I'm trying to say. I realize that some of these daily soaps have a recurring plot, which is that there is a bad woman, bad in single quotes, and there is a good woman, good in single quotes, and then there's a man. It is the mission of the good woman to prove that the bad woman is bad and to make the man realize what she's doing. Because, yes, she has nothing better to do. So, however, on a brighter side, I see that this is changing now. I mean, it's changing pretty slowly, but I see it changing now and it makes me happy because I watched this series called Four More Shots Please, and I watched Shakuntala Devi, which is a biopic, and there's this movie called Tirabanga that got recently released, and all of these movies have managed to show women and managed to show female characters in a manner in which they are left unlabeled. They are not portrayed in black and white. It's a great thing because Complexity makes characters beautiful, right? But I'm in no way saying that these pieces of fiction are, the models or the epitome of feminism in any way, because nothing fictional can ever be the model for real life feminism. It's not fiction's place to do that. A model for real life feminism can only come from reality. But as fiction does impact a major portion of us, I love how this change is coming about. And yes, I'm pretty happy about it. So, you know how there are a lot of movies with, sloppy action, killer physics, and yeah, like killed physics basically. I was sitting with a bunch of my friends and I was watching this movie, and they were pretty worked up and they thought it was pretty funny and irritating how bad the action scenes were, how stupid they were. And I was also irritated, but not because of the action scenes, but because of something else. And it was that there was a hero and there was a heroine, which are two terms I do not like using. But the point being that it's an action scene. The guy has to fight off like 100 guys alone, and there are like five guns, and they would manage to put one of those guns even in his hair, but not dare to give the girl a gun. So the girl had one job but to hide, but she would botch up that job as well. She would not hide properly while the guy was out there fighting 100 guys, and she would consequently get the guy killed. And I was like, people, you gave the girl one job but to hide, and you had to make her botch up that as well. So, yes, I was irritated as well, but I was irritated on a point that was slightly besides physics. Also, I started watching this show on YouTube called Behansplaining, and it's two YouTube content creators, women who review films from a feminist perspective, and I think it's hilarious. I mean, yeah, they rip apart every movie beautifully. Yeah, it's hilarious. Like, I just love watching it. I guess that's about it. And yes, so in my last episode, I spoke about the bonds we form with the artists of the art that we love. In the last week, a friend of mine asked me a question, which was a really nice one. So they asked me that if I really liked a piece of art, and I got to know that the artist, the creator, has done something unacceptable or something really wrong, would it impact how I feel about the piece of art, about their creation? And I thought this was a really nice question. And my answer to this was that yes, it would definitely change how I look at that piece. And it would be for a number of reasons. The first one would be that after knowing that the artist has done something that I do not like or something that is unacceptable, and I listen to the music they've made or whatever is the art that they've created, if I continue to enjoy it, I will continuously feel guilty that I am supporting something that I do not approve of. I will have a picture of whatever wrong that they've done popping in my head. So, yes, that would automatically ruin that for me. And the second one is a little bit more complicated. It is that whenever we like a piece of art, I will take the example of a song, maybe. So, if we like a song or if we absolutely love a song, we tend to relate it to something that is really personal to us, or we tend to understand it in a certain way. So, we understand the lyrics in a certain way, in a certain meaning that makes us fall in love with that song. But when we get to know that the creator, like the person who wrote the lyrics or the singer, has done some bad deeds, it changes the way we look at the creator, and it hence changes the way we look at the meaning of that piece of art. And personally, it would really reduce the love I have for that piece. So, as I said, it would change the way I perceive that piece of art. So, before I end this episode, I read a poem that I really loved and I want to read it out in this episode. And it's a poem by Vladimir Nabokov. And the poem is titled The Poem. So here it goes. Not the sunset poem you make when you think aloud, with its linden tree in India ink and the telegraph wires across its pink cloud. Not the mirror in you and her delicate bare shoulder still glimmering there. Not the lyrical click of a pocket rhyme, the tiny music that tells the time. And not the pennies and weights on those evening papers piled up in the rain. Not the cacodemons of the carnal pain. Not the things you can say so much better in plain prose. But the poem that hurtles from heights unknown, when you wait for the splash of the stone deep below and grope for your pen, and then comes the shiver, and then, in the tangle of sounds, the leopards of words, the leaf like insects, the eye spotted birds, fuse and form a silent, intense, mimetic pattern of perfect sense. So, yes, that was the poem. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. And if you like this podcast, you can subscribe to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, like any of these apps that you're using. So that's it. Bye bye.